Hey, welcome everybody to the second of our Unfiltered chats here at KipperTie. I'm John Marchant, this is my colleague Bryce Munn. I thought for today we'd kind of go back to basics a bit really, to have a chat about filters. It's what we're known for, obviously. It's at the heart of a lot of things we do, but it's also the heart of a lot of cinematography is filtration.
Absolutely, it's an interesting one for me as well because I use a lot of filters, but don't really know how they work. In they go, and they do a job. But I don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's for a lot of people that's probably true. You know, you choose based on the results. You know what works. You have your go-tos as far as diffusion are concerned, for example. I mean, there's a lot of people who I know will have, you know, it might be a glimmer glass, it might be a white mist, it might be something, and they're like, I know what I need for this, because it's just based on experience. However, that said, knowing what you choose and why is another part of the story. But the reason that I wanted to do these kind of sessions actually is to get a bit into the tech, a bit into the reason behind it. So I don't want to do a massive history lesson, all this stuff is out there, but there have been a lot of different kinds of filter for use in cinema. Some of those are really, in terms of the technology, past the point of usefulness as resolutions have improved, as everything's got better. You know, gelatin filters, things that are not based on glass, you know, practical, relatively low cost, decent for color, but very difficult to handle, you know, not robust, not necessarily great as far as the image quality is concerned. I mean, apart from what you want a filter to do, a hell of a lot of it is about what you don't want it to do. You don't want it to mess up the rest of the image or the stuff you care about. You want to single out that one thing and be like, okay, this filter is doing this job and only that. And if it gets in the way, it starts doing other things.
To me, the idea of putting gel in front of the sensor or in front of a lens is horrific.
It doesn't feel like a good substance to be working with. You know, it's delicate stuff.
We should say before we get into too much as well that we are keeping half an eye on the chat. So if you have questions that arise from what we're talking about, pop them on there. We'll
do our best to keep an eye on that and see what we can do to answer. So just to get into the real basics of it, one of the biggest decisions if you're either using or making a filter is how it's going to select the light, how it's going to say this is the light that is wanted, and how it's going to manipulate that. And one of the core things is, are you going to either absorb it or are you going to reflect it? It's pretty much as simple as that. The other core piece of technology that happens, and I don't want to touch on it too much here, is polarization. I will just give a little quick demo on this actually. So polarization is something that in our products we steer clear of in terms of using it as a way of filtering light for other purposes. It's kind of being used for secondary effects in a lot of places. A polarizer for the sake of a polarizer is a brilliant tool, really essential.
Absolutely.
But used for the wrong things, I'll just give you a little demo here. It's a lovely polar here from Rivasini, great guys. If you use the right side or the wrong side, there's a good reason this is labelled this side out. Seen from the correct side, it does what you're expecting.
This is the camera side.
Seen from the wrong side, you can have all manner of strange effects as soon as you have something else polarized in the scene. You know, I'm using an iPhone here as a way of showing that, but screens and polarized things are everywhere.
No matter what you're filming, they're constantly
modern environment, that's what you get. Now, obviously, what we were showing there was a polarizer for the sake of being a polarizer, so we expect, you know, to have it do certain things. However, there are lots of polarization-based NDs out there, which also exhibit color shifts and brightness shifts relative to polarized images, and doesn't matter which side we're looking at them from. If they're not designed appropriately, they can also do very strange things to polarized sources. So that was just a quick thing to cover off really about why when we're talking about filtration for either ND or for diffusion or for other purposes, we don't want to get near polarization if we can avoid it, because just philosophically speaking, I feel like that's a separate topic. You go to your polarizer when you need to cut out a specific reflection, when you want to see through the window of the car, you want to see what's going on under the surface of water, you want to control the reflections on a piece of glass on a product shot.
Absolutely.
That's where you need it.
Yeah.
To be restricted on that because you can't necessarily combine multiple polarization-based pieces of tech is quite restrictive. And it's one of those things that you'll only know it's biting you at the point where you go, hang on, why has the display on the car dashboard gone black? Or why can I not see through this piece of glass that looks absolutely fine?
I mean, from my point of view, these are things that don't pop up on prep days because you're not in the environment, you're not looking at the right screen.
Yeah, it's hard to prepare for. So yeah, that's one thing. I just wanted to quickly look at that. Maybe something people might be interested in is to have a deeper discussion at another time. So we might do another session where we talk about polarization a bit more. There are ways that that's mitigated for, and you could see from the Revar Cine one, there's a correct way of using that that allows them to correct some of the issues that are created.
Yeah. I'm intrigued just from a technical point of view, and like you say, for a future discussion, but like why a polarizing filter works on some light sources, but not on reflections off metal and stuff like that.
Yeah,
kind of the physics of that is an interesting subject.
It does verge into some high school physics and some diagrams. So maybe we'll get
the chalkboard out next time.
Exactly, we'll shelve that for the moment. But yeah, suffice to say, it's a larger topic.
Yeah.
One of the things though that it does reveal is that it matters which way round you place filters. It matters which surfaces are hit by the light first and how things are handled in that respect. So we'll come back to that as well in a moment. Probably one of the biggest, most obvious examples I can give of how a filter is selecting light, choosing certain wavelengths, is with infrared filters. So we've had some experience on that with IR filters for wildlife filmmaking or for creative purposes that we've made. But it's a common concept to basically block out visible light and allow infrared light through.
Which I guess is like an extreme of every filter, if it's a color filter of some form, is doing that.
It's doing it to some degree.
A little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this is an extreme way of showing things. So just to give a little indication on that, first of all, so this little piece of glass that I've got here is an infrared filter. Passes IR light, doesn't allow visible light through. So obviously, invisible light to our eyes, it looks black. And what we can actually do, we've got a camera set up here that is showing IR, and you can very likely see that in IR, it actually looks like a completely transparent piece of glass. It still looks somewhat black.
This is an IR light, right?
Yes, that's it. So this is an LED outputting IR, like you might have for a security light. And yeah, as I say, you can see that although it looks black in visible light, it looks basically completely transparent to the IR. So, that's a very extreme version of what a filter does. But what it can also do is help me kind of demo and highlight here. There's two very big different ways of doing this. So both of the filters I'm holding right now are actually IR filters. They both have the same net effect as far as the image is concerned, but one of them is completely black. And the other one, I might even be able to catch my face in it if I'm lucky. There we go. The other one literally just looks like a mirror. But they both do the same thing. Oh, that's a delightful image. I managed to get my face in it there. So, yeah, this is two different approaches. One of them is about absorbing the light that you don't want. One of them is about reflecting the light that you don't want. And being able to choose which those are when you're shooting and be able to understand which is actually quite a big deal.
Why does it make a difference to me as an operator? Why would I choose one or the other?
To put it really straightforwardly, if you choose a filter which is a front of lens filter, and it works predominantly by reflecting unwanted light of whatever wavelength. That light's got to go somewhere. And sure as hell, it's going to land somewhere you don't want it. You're going to end up with a big 4 by 5.65 reflection of something on a wall or in in an actor's face. It can, that can happen. Putting the filter behind the lens is different. You're then into internal reflections taking place within the lens, which are less obvious, but still can be significant depending on how it's handled.
And to dumb it down, essentially affects the characteristics of the lens flare, although it's not really.
Exactly. It's the sort of internal flare. Yeah. But I guess the interesting thing is that, these are two very different bits of technology. You're talking about dyeing molten glass and casting it into sheets and judging the strength of that dye and the color of that dye to give, for example, a neutral density filter, or using very, very high tech vacuum chambers and electron sputtering to lay down these thin film coatings on the surface of the glass, which is something we owe to kind of the space race and the and the microchip industry. These are incredibly high tech processes compared to dyeing glass, which is pretty much a centuries old idea. But one of those is very artisan and very hard to be precise about, and the other one is incredibly scientific and carries with it a totally different kind of approach. Often what you actually end up with is technology that combines the two, but it's really useful to be able to know what are the coatings on a piece of glass that I'm using. People are often interested in the coatings on a lens because it affects the color, the character, the flare, the way things look in a more esoteric kind of way.
It's also quite common now to see that as marketing and lens
absolutely,
demonstrating the coatings that they have.
Yes, that's it. But to be clear, those are predominantly anti-reflection coatings. An anti-reflection coating works in the same way that all of these thin film coatings do, which is effectively they're constructed out of microscopically thin layers of different materials, and the different materials have different refractive indices, and so you can create constructive or destructive patterns at different wavelengths that cause light to be reflected or not. And I mean, the science involved is really, it's very complex stuff. Being able to design those coatings is, it's a very tall order. And then being able to accurately reproduce them is also tough. And an anti-reflection coating sounds like a singular concept, but it's not. There are some formulae out there that are seen as kind of standards. But people have their own bespoke methods. I mean, if you get a pair of spectacles, a pair of glasses, and you ask the optician, and they'll say, "Oh, you can have the anti-reflection coating," it's kind of seen as just a yes/no option. Do you want it or not? And in a lot of cases, what you'll notice is that for that simple coating, you'll get a green tint to the reflection in the lenses, and that green tint shows that AR coating is there, but what it's actually doing is illustrating to you that the green is the wavelength of light that has been least effectively controlled. So the color of the reflection is actually, this is the part that's anti-reflection to the least.
Yeah, because that's
what you're seeing.
Exactly.
So when you look at either a filter or a lens and its coatings, you're then judging those internal reflections, and particularly on the flare of a lens. If you ever look at a good old-fashioned software lens flare, where you get to see the individual components of it, and you see it in real life in just the same way. They each have a distinct color, shape, and strength, and there are often multiple colors for very good reasons, which is that if you have a complex system of glass and light, you want all of the light to pass through it. If you have all of your anti-reflection coatings exactly the same as one another, any light that manages to get past the first one will probably get past the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and make its way all the way through. So what you do is you set up different lines of defense. You have a filter with one kind of coating, and then you have one with another kind, and one with another kind. And through that balance of which coatings are used on which faces of which pieces of glass, you end up with a really good anti-reflection system taken as a whole. But you also have this really interesting esoteric result in the flare, where it is built out of these multiple different colors and these multiple different textures that become part of the aesthetic of the image. I mean, it's really interesting stuff, but what I would say is it also applies to just straightforward filters that you either put in a matte box or drop in behind a lens. You want to be looking at that stuff and seeing, what does it actually look like? What do the reflections look like? Because that will feed back into the lens, or it might literally bounce into your scene and be part of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give another little example here from my my kit of parts on the table. So what we've got here is an optical low-pass filter, as red aficionados would know it. Actually, that terminology, I'm not going to dive into that right now. It's not really what it is. This is a color separation filter. It's basically designed to make sure that the camera doesn't see wavelengths it shouldn't. Now, it looks a pale blue-green color. And the main blue-green color that you can see comes from some very specific grades of blue-green glass, which are industry standards, and you can largely expect that those are well controlled. As I said before, it's almost an artisan process making dyed glass. So companies like Schott, for example, have batches of this type of glass, and they do their level best not to make new and repetitive batches of it for fear of changes to the formula. So there will be limited quantities of certain specific characteristics that are well understood, and we're taking slices off our block of cheese over time.
It's like a good single malt.
That's it, yeah. It's not to be repeated in a sense.
And you can't blend it like you can.
Yeah. But what you can do is add multiple things to the mix. So like I say, what we're seeing right now, the transmission through onto my white card here is just showing that blue-green filter. What we do actually have, and we can probably see it in the reflection, is a surface coating as well. So it's different from one side to the other. So one side just has an anti-reflection coating, and the other has effectively what you would call a hot mirror, so something that's reflecting infrared light. And as a result of that, you can probably just about see in the shadow that I've got going on there that as the light from either side in the room is coming in, here we go, I'll just shade it a little bit with my hand. One side appears to be showing green and the other side appears to be showing red. And just to show that's not me fudging things with the light sources, that is something that works in both directions.
Stupid question, but which side is the sensor?
So in this instance, the red is towards the lens and the blue-green glass is towards the sensor. But that's the kind of thing that's actually the subject of a lot of careful work from the point of view of the camera designers. Some cameras will have only certain coatings. Some might have only the blue-green glass. Some will have, effectively complex sandwiches of technology to control the image. Now, that level of complexity is applicable when you are talking about a filter that sits directly in front of the sensor and is part of what I would call the really complex compromise of building a camera system. The filters you use creatively aren't really subject to those same restraints. When you build a camera, you're trying to say, well, this has got to be the best it can be for the whole job.
Absolutely, it's clean and it's perfect.
It's got to be, you've got to answer as many questions yes as possible with as few compromises. When you attach something to that camera for a job, you can afford to then say, well, today I need this, so I can go more strongly in a given direction. And then, that's where, when we get into more creative stuff, diffusion filters rather than ND, you can start to do stuff that is, doesn't require that same level of compromise. You can be a bit more specific.
Yeah.
And I mean, more stuff that I've got on my my little demo pile here. The two filters that that I'm holding at the moment, these are both diffusion filters actually, and the way that we constructed that to work is by laminating some other elements inside the glass. So the oldest trick in the cinematographer's book is the stocking fabric stretched over the back of the lens. That's exactly what this is. It's literally vintage, hard to find fabric embedded in the glass. It's a very specific look. It's really quite extreme to a lot of people's tastes, but it gives
it's a creative choice.
A creative choice, exactly. And one of the nice things is to be able to take those creative choices and encapsulate them, almost literally encapsulate them, and say, right, that is now going to be the same every time I do it.
Absolutely.
And that's tough in a lot of ways. You want to have, if you have a creative choice, you want to be able to, in prep, show somebody some test footage and go, look, this is what this does. And then when you get to set, you know that you're going to be able to reproduce it and it's going to work the way that you've said it will. Now, like I say, this is probably a case of diving deeper into stuff than most people will when they're selecting a set of filters. But we do get a lot of situations where people don't necessarily understand the terminology or don't necessarily understand anything beyond, I know what works.
Yeah.
And literally choosing ND filters, whichever kind it is, whether it's, it comes with compromises. It's one of the reasons that not every camera manufacturer builds them in, because it is subject to compromise.
Or why, when they're already built in, you might choose.
You might still use, yeah, exactly, because you're then in that same creative zone of saying, okay, I want to make the choice. So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about with this. Realistically, though, there are a couple of other things I just wanted to share, just because it's some cool stuff.
Absolutely.
So just to show how we're going with progress here, so I know people are probably also finding the stream wanting to find out about Strata Electro, when things are going to be released.
Yeah.
We're getting closer by the day with that. But here's a fun little thing. From the inside of a Strata Electro, this is one of the combination clear and ND filters. We have worked with our manufacturing partner really hard on the anti-reflection coating. So the AR stuff is what we were talking about just now. Hopefully it should be pretty apparent to look at that on camera that the anti-reflection coating and properties, as I wiggle it around, are really pretty good.
I can't see the clear.
The clear almost disappears. So we've worked very hard. I can just catch a reflection on it if I keep wiggling and try and find it. There it is. Yeah. There we go.
And like you were saying earlier, it's green.
Yeah, so that's got a colour to it. And we've chosen our sort of peak wavelengths for those filters in different ways for the different layers, which means that by the time you get constructively all the way through the filter, you haven't reinforced any one specific one of them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, people ask, what effect does it have? Yeah, it has an effect. It's very hard to tell people explicitly what that effect is. And it's easy to think that putting a filter in front of a lens is just as simple as, well, nothing happened. And it's never as simple as that. It always has to be considered as part of a whole optical system. And there are always additional effects.
Especially when there's multiple planes of glass, which is something that hasn't occurred in any of our products.
No, that's it. But the Strata ND we have two, but there are multiple pieces of glass going on here. Conceptually, there's no issue with that. Sony do it in the Venice with great effect. But it just takes a lot of precision as far as the coatings are concerned. I mean, another interesting thing that you can probably see there as well is the thickness. I know we've talked about this before.
I mean, what's just caught my attention, because this is actually the first time that I've seen, especially the way you've got them stacked there in the tray.
Yeah, that's it. This is how we actually look after the stock glass
look
as it's being prepped.
Phenomenally thin compared to what I've seen before on the shelf, or
indeed.
These with double layers, obviously, but
yes, but those are much more chunky. I mean, one of the big differences there is that you're not touching these. There's only a certain amount of glass on the strata electrode that you would need to touch to clean, and I mean, I've literally been engaged in some testing just recently on how much force can you apply to it, so
which
that we
has been
can
quite amusing
characterize.
seeing that going on.
Yeah, that's it. Literally stacking weights on the back of the glass so that we can characterize how robust is it. Trying to make sure that, for example, if somebody does get really aggressive and pushes super hard on the filters, it should let go of its mounting before the filter breaks, because I don't want broken glass occurring. So there's been some really fun engineering on that.
I mean, that brings up another question I had, talking about cleaning, because you mentioned opticians earlier sending you anti-reflective coatings. And I know from a fact the anti-reflective coating on my glasses makes my glasses hard to clean.
Yes. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. There's multiple things going on, actually, when it comes to those kinds of coatings. I'll just do a little, I feel like one of those guys demonstrating a squeegee at a trade show or something here. But just to give a little example, I've got two bits of glass here, both of which have broadly equivalent anti-reflective coatings. But this larger one only has the AR coating. It doesn't have anything else. And it means that you get the best possible anti-reflective performance. But what it means also is that when it gets wetted with something, as you can kind of see if I catch the reflection there, like that, it streaks and it wets the glass really quite effectively. And that means, apologies for the horror of just touching the filters with my bare hands there, but that is effectively really quite hard to clean. You can, but it becomes a problem. It's very easy for oils and things like that on the surface to then smear. This piece of glass has effectively very much the same kind of anti-reflection coatings, but you'll notice that the surface color actually looks different in the reflection, if I can just catch it there. So you'll see it's actually got a stronger magenta reflection. Now, the reason for that is that, among other things, when you add those anti-fog, anti-scratch, anti-everything else coatings, they are part of the optical formula as well. They have an effect on the visual side of things. What they do give you, though, for glass that you're going to practically touch is, like I say, the shop demo thing of I can put a droplet of liquid on it and the droplet of liquid rolls around and slides straight off. I can, literally sort of wipe it on any half decent piece of cloth with a little bit of liquid, and it, like magic, it will just literally fall off. So again, these are engineering choices in some respects, but they're also choices that you can make as an end user when you're selecting a filter to shoot with. If I'm going to go out somewhere where there's a load of salt spray from the sea and there's, it's a real tough environment, I might choose something that explicitly has, and that I have tested, has really good anti-fog qualities like that, where the water will bead and run off.
Which is a really interesting thought for me, because I have never previously had that in my thought process.
It's a useful thing to be aware of, because much as that is useful in that environment, if you're concerned about internal reflections or you're concerned about double images and other bits and pieces that might occur, that's going to be more prevalent when you have those additional functions. And of course, what the sales patter would tend to tell you when you look at a spec sheet for any piece of equipment like that, the more features it ticks, the more you go, oh, brilliant, that's exactly what I want. But the thing is, often as you start to layer the functions up, the compromises start to creep in. So being able to make educated choices, can actually be a really valuable thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'll show you one more fun thing, and then I think we're going to try and wrap up. I'm trying to keep myself on track here. Just an interesting little piece of tech, because we work with filters all the time. we actually decided to put together just recently a dynamic range chart of our own in a really portable form that can be used with different light sources. So this is literally based on our ND technology. It's pretty simple. It's a robust aluminium frame with ND glass stacked inside it to give 17 stops of dynamic range, but you can, it's good and tough. It has that same anti-reflective, anti-fog coatings I was just talking about. So you can just kind of wipe it down and keep it clean. It's not sensitive, but you can bash it in front of any light source. And that's been the thing for me. If I've used dynamic range charts, it's frustrating when the color temp of the chart doesn't line up with the native color temp of the camera that you're testing, because you waste dynamic range correcting the color balance. It also doesn't tell you about the different things that can happen depending on whether it's a hot tungsten practical source of some kind, an old-fashioned hot light, or an LED. So just a fun thing. I don't know that we'll productize it. It's something that I thought was relevant to the chat, and it's just kind of interesting to look at. And it's also a very quick way of calling any camera that you might want to on nonsense about dynamic range. You can wave it in front of any light source you like and go, can I see all of these stops? We know exactly what we're getting.
It's also quite an extreme way to show how neutral the neutral density actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it, yes. I mean,
there's a lot of, down here, there's a lot of filters on top of each other.
Yes, we're stacked several layers deep there. But yeah, I mean, our spec for neutrality on that is pretty demanding. We're not popular with our our suppliers on that, because I do get a bit militant about the accuracy. Anyway, that's about where we want to wrap it up. We'll, with any luck, be back a little bit sooner than last time. Somebody took holiday in between.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll look forward to chatting again. We'll pick up some more techie discussion, and yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm going to go and look at the filters we have on the shelf in our kit bag and see what
I've given
characteristics
you, exactly.
I'm intrigued now.
Given you a task by mistake.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll see you all again.